Hello everybody, so today we're going to be taking a look at how to benchmark things, how to benchmark properly, because most of the tweaking community doesn't really know how to benchmark or just doesn't benchmark and go off with the feeling like, oh, on desktop it feels so good. When built in Fortnite, literally zero input delay, like zero. But like in reality it could have been placebo, or the person thinks that it's better but it's actually like slightly worse than it used to be. So basically recording this video to show to everyone how you should benchmark and what you should do and not do when you benchmark. So let's talk a little bit about the benchmark process. So when you benchmark, you want as few processes running in the background as possible. So you see here I have Discord, close Discord. Nothing else has to be running in the background so it doesn't interfere without benchmarking, so we have as less variables as possible. And the tool we're going to be using today for capturing the benchmarks and the benchmark analysis is Capframex. For people who are on earlier versions of OxOS, Capframex doesn't work, but you can still use OCAT and then basically drop the JSON profile to Capframex, captures, and here basically drop the OCAT profile here and it will be basically here. Let's get into the interface of the program, what it does, how to capture, what is better to use, what is not to use. So yeah, first of all, in older versions of the Capframex, if you're using the oldest version, you can enable the dark mode just by going here, app, dark mode. Good, enabled. That's good. So when you just open the app, you'll be greeted with the capture screen. There are a few options, like on the left side, basically your captures, record info. If you click on any capture, you can add comments, change CPU description, and other things. On the main side of the window, we have running the processes and process ignore list, which you basically want to put in the process like browsers and stuff that you don't want to benchmark, you don't want to capture. Here a little bit down, your capture hotkey, you can remap it to whatever you like. I use numpad 7. Capture time, basically you can make it 0, so you'll have to press, in my case numpad 7 when you want to start and numpad 7 when you want to stop the recording. But for like better consistency, we're just going to be using a time limit, so you can set it to 2 minutes, 1 minute, basically how long you want the benchmark to last. Capture delay is not really needed unless you want to, like, there are some situations when, let's say for example, your game loads or whatever and textures loads and FPS can be like down. So to avoid capturing that, you can basically press numpad 7. It will wait like 1 second in my case, or like whatever you like 5 seconds, and then it will like actually start capturing. Hotkey sound, so you know you started the recording, you can basically turn it off. Not needed really. This window is the logger output, basically will say if you press something like numpad 7, if I press capture triggered but no process was detected. Basically a neat menu which tells you what is going on. And at the bottom we have a capture service, overlay, sensor login status, accessible bar, and Windows game mode. Windows game mode, turn that thing off. I'm on custom stripped window, so it shows like it's on, but in fact Windows game mode is stripped. Xbox stuff is fully stripped, so it just bugged. Keep it as it is. Don't mind it. So what you want to do here, you want to disable overlay and you want to disable sensor login, because that's like, overlay is a layer that you don't want to have on your game while benchmarking, and sensor login is, well, you don't really want to like capture your temps or anything else unless you want to like see if your GPU throttles, but like apps like superposition already have like in the top right a sensor which will tell like your memory frequency, your core frequency. So I'll also turn this off. So in overlay you need to install RevoTuner statistics overlay. You need to go to OSD options here and turn this thing off, or you can just like enable auto disable OSD, but I don't really see any sense. When you'll be benchmarking it will turn off, and when you're not benchmarking it will be on. Just turn it off globally. And here sensor log sensors, I turn that off as well. Now where you can benchmark are basically these three apps, like GPU benchmarks mostly, Heaven benchmark, superposition, and latest Liblava 2021 alpha. So these three are actually like GPU benchmarks. So in case you want to test some tweaks, I would rather, like in a real world scenario, I would enable Fortnite captures, Fortnite replays, so you can basically load up your match, your arena game or your creative game, and basically see how it behaves and capture the game. And yeah, basically where you can find those benchmarks, they're all on the internet. So this is Heaven benchmark. Links will be down in the description, by the way, so just go here, click Windows, it will download. Here as well, Windows, and here this is Liblava, has its own GitHub, so you need to go to releases and you need to go to download, and it will download. Then you just unzip. So now where you would want to benchmark your max FPS is in Liblava. It has a couple of presets like generic triangle, lamp, light, shape, spawn, triangle, and unit. You can basically load up all of those and see. I'm just gonna go with an easy triangle. Now if you, let's see if it's being captured right now, our game. So we see running process, allow a triangle. That's really good. We're gonna do like 16 seconds for this. Right, we're gonna set no delay because we don't need a delay for this. And yeah, if you basically hover over the Liblava 2021 alpha, it will tell you what to do. So we're gonna be wanting to enter full screen, which will be Alt Enter, and then we just press numpad 7 and start the capture. Now you just have to wait until it's over. Okay, so now it's done benchmarking, and we can go to analysis, double click on lava triangle and load this up, and we can see our frame times and moving average, and as well as some other stats like 95%, average 5%, 1%, 0.2%, 1%. You can basically add all of these. Like you can add, let's say, 1% low integral, 0.1 percent low integral, minimum FPS. You can see the variance, adaptive STDev, standard deviation. So yeah, basically what you would be looking for is 0.1, 1%, and 0.2% maybe. Yeah, as well as 0.1% low and 1% low. So those are like the most important of the bunch. So this is the FPS that you actually feel, and well, the more you have it, the better your game feels. Not like, yeah, like almost 4,000 average, but if you have like really low, 0.1% low, 1% low, you know, just 1% and 0.1%, 0.2% low, like your game will not feel as good. If they're like 100, for example, I have like 4,000, your game will feel like it's 100 FPS only. So yeah, adaptive variance is also really good to look at, because the lower it is, the better. And if you check the frame time here, you can basically see that this was like all choppy because I was recording, and then I stopped the recording and it was like more or less smoother, right? So that's for analysis tab. In comparison tab, you can compare stuff basically, yeah, how it sounds. You can also add a comment which will help you identify what it is that you benchmarked, like let's say Liblava, no tweaks first, right? And basically, yeah, let's put like a like my all superposition stings, which doesn't really matter because yeah. So here at the bottom we have context, and I would really advise you to put that custom comment here, or at least like date and time. Don't do date and time though, just like label all your benchmarks and put context on custom comment so you can see what you actually were benchmarking. And second context doesn't really matter, you can do anything like RAM, GPU, CPU, or you can just do date, I guess. So because your GPU and CPU is basically all the time the same, and you need the comment what we were benchmarking at the time, so you know when you're benchmarking it, right? So next up, metrics. This is basically here average FPS, 1% percentile FPS, and 0.1% FPS, right? You can basically choose those, set them to 1% percentile and 0.1% percentile, or 1% low integral and 0.1% low integral. Yeah, so basically this is like a benchmark variance, nothing much. I can say that 1 FPS more is like on 0.1 here, but it's like without tweaks, it's like a benchmark variance. So yeah, actually these are labeled like this, but there were actually no tweaks in both of those, so it's basically the same benchmark. Nothing has changed over in the system, right? So that's what you have for the comparison tab. So just keep in mind that you should not compare apples to peaches, you know. You cannot compare like something from one game, for example, to another game. If you like say, oh, I benchmarked this Fortnite replay in my game A, where I got Victory Royale, and then I for some reason don't benchmark the same game with like other tweaks, but I benchmark other game with other tweaks, and the frame times are not the same, everything is not the same. I just benchmark something, one thing at a time. Don't benchmark like one game with these tweaks and the second game with those tweaks. Just benchmark one game with one tweak and benchmark the same game with other tweaks. Okay. So here we have basically 3 runs of Liblava. This run is worse, of course, because I was capturing it on OBS, so that's why this is so much different, like 500 FPS on 0.1%, but still, right? So to actually make sure that your tweak is good and it's not placebo, and it's not just a benchmark variance, and it's not, you would want to use such a thing as aggregation, right? So how it works, it basically compiles your 3 benchmarks, 4 benchmarks, 5 benchmarks, whatever you want, 2 benchmarks, into a single benchmark. So how it works, just pull this, push this in, and push this in, basically, right? And then you click aggregate including outliers. Bang. So then you have this average result, right? And there it appears here, right? So you can call it like, how do we call it? Something Liblava, no tweaks, average, right? You'll see it has like aggregation, it has a check mark, that this is basically a compiled benchmark. So yeah, basically average of all of these 3 benchmarks, right? So what is also important is that you sort of maintain the stability between your benchmarks. And what I mean by that is basically, in the perfect world, you would wanna restart every time you do a benchmark, right? But at least when you're testing like one tweak and you wanna cut some time, you basically just benchmark, right? After the benchmark, close the game, right? Wait for a few like minutes until the temps are good again, and start the benchmark again. So basically start off with the same temperature and more or less the same conditions. Okay, but after like you apply some sort of tweak, a restart is a must. Okay, so now we have our aggregated benchmark that for some reason doesn't want to be given a name, and yeah, it's good now. I can also like hover over these ones and it will highlight which exactly one you're looking at. So yeah, this is basically how you want to benchmark the things, and then you can remove all of these and you can basically just put your aggregated profile, and let's say you did another tweak, right? And you also have like 3 Liblava tweaked profile, right? Tweaks profiles. You also aggregate them here. Just basically drag them all in and click aggregate, including outliers, right? And you basically have them, and you go to comparison and you double click on the no tweaks one, aggregated, and the tweaked one, aggregated, and you compare basically. You can also do a more sort of like in-depth comparison here, but it's like doesn't really like compare it that much, like, so you can see at the same time one aggregated benchmark and the other one is just like this. You see, it's like one at a time. Well, I mean, you can basically see the difference if like this aggregated profile will have like 4,000, this will have like 0.1% lows, like 1,600, and the other one will have like 1,800. You like know at once that basically the 1,800 one is much better than our 1,600 one. But like in this kind of benchmark, you see when you have that many frames, like average 4,000, right? The variance between the 1% lows is getting like higher and higher, where if you like were to say we're benchmarking an arena game with let's say capped 288 FPS, right? The 1% lows and the 0.1% lows wouldn't be like that much different. So if you like, I mean, this is the first one. Okay, tweak 1, we're gonna compare tweak 2 because those ones were without the coin, right? So this is like 1,800, right? This is also like 1,800. It's like 40 FPS difference, right? And it's still like a benchmark variation because we have like loads of frames, like 4,000. So it's fine for the benchmark, right? But you were like capped at 288, it would like just like a couple of frames variance, maybe 5, 7, right? And you need to like really see if you're like benchmarked without a tweak and with a tweak, which is like better. So that's why you should like make as many benchmarks as possible and then aggregate them to like sort of avoid that variance that you can have by the benchmark variance. If you get what I'm saying, right? You want to prove 100% that the tweak itself is not being a benchmark variance, that it improves your FPS, improves your 1% lows, 0.1% lows, 1%, 0.2%, improves all of this. Basically, you want to prove this. No, it's just like, oh, it's just a tweak. It does nothing, but I'm still gonna use it, even though it's like placebo, or maybe the tweak even makes FPS worse. But like, you can make, for example, FPS worse, but make, for example, your latency slightly bit better. Latency is really tough subject to measure. A really tough subject to measure. You don't really measure latency with latency mon. We can use xperf. You can use xperf to basically capture how many interrupts you have of this delay and that delay. Basically see what is better, what works better. Yeah, I wouldn't say benchmarks or like everything, but they're a big part. I wouldn't say some tweak. For example, there's like no, for example, difference in FPS. Like it's almost the same FPS, almost the same things, but like for example, like mouse static queue sizes, because you have like less buffer, you have slightly better mouse polling rate, right? And yeah, basically like FPS benchmark doesn't prove this, that you have like better mouse polling rate. So there are like other tools with which you measure other stuff for your PC. Now we're gonna talk just a little bit about the benchmarks, like GPU only benchmarks, right? How you should basically benchmark, more like tips and tricks to those benchmarks. So in heaven, there is not much to be done. You just like load the extreme preset and change it to custom, change this to full screen, change this resolution to full HD. So basically max out your system, right? And then when you load the benchmark, you just click sound, disable sound, and click benchmark. Yeah, and then you start Capframex, because just the benchmark will show your like average score, right? But it will like not show you the 1%, 0.1% lows, right? So benchmark are still like really things to measure the FPS and all of this stuff, because you would want to like measure it in a real world scenario, like a Fortnite replay game or Overwatch replay game, for example, right? So you basically have the same conditions. However, to superposition, this is like if you want to basically test the max frames, 720 custom, basically a low preset. Then if you want to like also test like on max settings, you can do like 1080p extreme or like 8K optimized, but yeah. Superposition has some handy settings though that you would want to apply. So I turned off sound and music. Really annoying with this turned on. Please never keep this on. Tooltips off, and DPI scan also off. So yeah, for Liblava there are no tips. Just make sure you're in full screen and you'll be Gucci. Just make sure you're in full screen. So yeah, I hope I helped you a little bit to show you how to benchmark. And yeah, so now you can basically test everything that you want. Just make sure you restart after a tweak, or if you want, you can restart every time you do one benchmark, right? Wait some time when you're doing the next round of the benchmark, so you basically keep the same temps, right? And yeah, that's basically it. There's like nothing super hard to benchmark. It just takes time and dedication to actually like make a lot of benchmarks, like at least 3 to be sure. 5 is better, you know, the more the better here. So you're making sure you're not falling into the placebo trap, right? So yeah, that's it. Okay. Thank you all for watching this video. I hope I wasn't too too boring for you to listen to. All the links that you will need for like Twitter, YouTube, whatever. On YouTube, links to YouTube, very good. Cat on to Twitch, everything else, social media. You can find all the links to Liblava, Superposition, Heaven, Capframex as well. It's also a GitHub project, but you basically know how to download GitHub projects right now, as I showed on the Liblava GitHub, right? So yeah, take care guys, and see you in the next video.